Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. First and foremost, let me state this video is going to have spoilers for Veilguard. So if this is a problem, you should probably go ahead and exit now. Yesterday, Bioware did an AMA, Ask Me Anything, on Reddit, and it allowed a wide swath of people to be able to submit their questions and get them answered by John Epler and Corinne Bush, who are the creative and game directors for Veilguard, respectively. First and foremost, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate them doing this. A lot of the questions were very interesting and pulled out information that I have been curious about. So really cool stuff. I think many of you are going to like this video. We're going to break this video up into different sections. In the first section, there are two pieces provided in the AMA that I feel very strongly about. One of them I really like, one of them I really dislike. So I want to talk about them right up front. Then after we get through with that, I'll start doing quick hits where I'm not going to provide a whole lot of commentary because I feel like I've talked about this game a bunch. I've talked about it in my review. You all know my perspective on many of these topics. And so I'm just going to provide you with information from their perspective and some cool tidbits that they included in the AMA. I will include a link down below to the AMA as well, so you'll be able to see it for yourself. But that information is going to be split up into different sections. So you'll see chapters down below for future games, Solas, world building, and Veilguard, depending on what aspect of Dragon Age you're most interested in. I want to just say up front, because I think my feelings towards the beginning of the video are going to be very strong. There's a lot of people who are saying, you know, Bioware will never make another great game again. This team that made Veilguard is terrible. I never want them to touch Dragon Age again, blah, blah, etc., etc. I'm not one of those people. If another Dragon Age game gets announced and John and Corinne are both in their same respective positions, that's no problem for me whatsoever. I had issues with Veilguard. I was very clear and upfront about them in my review, but there's nothing that I've seen or heard that would make me say this team is incapable of making a good Dragon Age game, and there's no reason I should trust them. I have disagreements with how they've interpreted certain things, specifically regarding Tevinter and Solas. I don't like how these things were handled in the game, but on a broad level, pulling back, I absolutely believe that they can produce a better product than what we got in Veilguard, and it would be a game that most Dragon Age fans would enjoy. So my personal perspective, I know everybody doesn't agree, but I just want to make sure there's some context regarding the criticism I might have in this video. With that, let's go ahead and get started. And I would just like to get right into the section of the AMA that I strongly disagree with. There was a question about why is Solas alone? What happened to the army that was supposed to be connecting with him at the end of Inquisition? And the answer provided is there is no elf army because Solas has decided he's not a leader. The experience of being in charge ate at him and convinced him he needed to do everything on his own. Also, his personal motivations are very different from the motivations of those who follow him. He has no regard for their lives or their goals, so he severed that connection with his followers. There are Dalish clans who are sympathetic to his goals, but even there's an understanding that he's too dangerous to have a more formal connection with, and that he will ultimately sacrifice them to his own ends if necessary. All right, so that's what they wrote, right? Again, I want to say this is not, what I'm saying is not reflective of their skills, not reflective of their ability to handle Dragon Age. I'm good with them in their positions. I'm not trying to change any of that. This is a bunch of bullshit. This is absolutely a bunch of bullshit, and it's cover for them basically ignoring and throwing away a whole layer of complexity regarding Solas's story and the question of whether or not he should tear down the veil. First and foremost, none of this is in the game. There ain't shit in the game whatsoever about Solas interacting with the other elves, making any sort of attempt to be a leader since the time of Inquisition. Like he talked about when he first woke up, he had a bad interaction. But there's nothing since the time of Inquisition when this whole army was flooding to meet him about what happened there. So this is all cover your ass nonsense, all right? The other issue is the idea that Solas had this moment of self-reflection and decided he wasn't good enough to become a leader and that he just wasn't a good leader and that's why he's decided to be on his own is complete nonsense. Solas is incapable of looking at a problem and saying that he's incapable of solving it. Like, this is from someone who loves Solas, all right? His pride is central to who he is. The only reason Solas gives you the dagger at the end of Veilguard is because he knows he can use you to kill Elganon and tear down the veil. If he felt like there was any possibility that giving you the dagger would cause the veil not to come down, he wouldn't have done it. Solas always believes his way of doing things is right. He always believes he's the smartest person in the room, and he always believes everybody else should be doing what it is he wants them to do. The idea that he decided that, oh, well, I'm not a leader, these people, they shouldn't follow me. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to follow. That ain't Solas. That's not Solas at all. You didn't want to talk about the issues. And I'm sorry, I talked about this extensively in my review. We're not going to rehash the whole conversation here. But you did not want to talk about the issues related to Elven suffering. You decided to go in a completely different direction. You don't have to do this to his character in order to make that change. You could just say, hey, we decided to go in a different direction. Because even if all of this is true, right? And you have none of this in the game, it still doesn't make sense that there's no dialogue in the game whatsoever about alienages, about what the elves have actually been experiencing, about the way the elves have been impacted, and how the veil coming down would change their lives. There's nothing about it. There's nothing about it. So no, it's not Solas didn't want to be a leader. Y'all dropped the ball on this. Y'all dropped the ball on this and did not follow up on this properly. Period. Point blank period. Don't insult people's intelligence, man. No. All right. Next thing that is, I actually feel like is some great news, and I'm really happy about it. And frankly, it makes me excited about another Dragon Age game. John Epler mentioned that Minrathous is a place that he would like to return to as its importance goes up after Veilguard, and it's essentially the diplomatic hub of Thedas. Consequently, future DA games would reference characters such as the Divine, the King of Ferelden, and some of your old party members to help further establish the city's role as the center of diplomacy. Old fans would recognize them and feel connected, while new fans would need to feel left out because their past wouldn't matter. Corinne would also like to explore using the hero of Ferelden in future games. This is difficult due to finding that character a voice that players will believe fits. Veilguard's ending will have long-lasting geopolitical impacts, creating groups that will try to take advantage of the chaos. This will cause the next game to focus on a much smaller scale. Instead of end-of-the-world implications, things would move to the world is changing. How do you adapt and react? That all sounds fantastic, and honestly, for me, it's shocking. I felt very strongly that after the end of Veilguard, we were going to move into a place where, all right, none of the past matters, none of these previous characters matter, and they were going to do everything in their power to just do a clean break where none of the previous games had to be considered. But it looks like that's actually not the case at all, and they would much rather move into a direction where In the next game, they could pull a lot from the South. It seems like they would want to make a game where it was about potentially you being in the North, but having to create diplomatic relations or reestablish diplomatic relations with people in the South, which could be amazing. Amazing watching Alistair try to rebuild Ferelden after it's been almost completely wiped out by the Blight. Amazing seeing how Liliana might try to figure out how to work with the Archon, Dorian, most likely, right? Like there's a lot of cool connections that could potentially be made here. I never even considered we would actually get a real end to the Hero of Ferelden story. And so to hear that they're seriously considering trying to figure out how to do that, a Hero of Ferelden follow-up with Morgan in the game where they would be able to reconnect and we could maybe get a real true ending to that Witch Hunt DLC, I would purchase a Dragon Age game off of that alone. And it's fascinating to see that they will pull back that far because I honestly, I'm just be straight up with you, I felt like they were basically going to abandon Origins fans because Inquisition sold so much more. It's obviously got way more people who have played it. And so a lot of them wouldn't be familiar with the Hero of Ferelden or even know that type of history. Honestly, it's cool to hear them talk about this and say like, hey, this is the kind of stuff we're trying to figure out for the next game. All right, those are the two major points where I wanted to provide some commentary about it. The next stuff, I don't want this video to be crazy long, so it's all gonna be just quick hits, and then I might do a later video sometime down the line where I'll pull out a couple of these and we'll talk separately. But for now, I'm just gonna give you all this information. Again, there are chapters down below if there are a particular section that you would like to get to. All right, first up is future games. There is still no hard canon. Some of Harding's dialogue hints at choices becoming canon, but that's due to the long development cycle. All previous choices continue to be respected, and as previously mentioned, some of them will matter in future games. Corinne is also open to doing a game that parallels Veilguard, where you play as the Inquisitor fighting to stop the Blight in the South. Veilguard was very Elves focused, and future games will most likely focus on other races, specifically the Dwarves and Qunari relationship with the Titans and Dragons respectively. Bioware is aware many players would like to see them explore polyamorous relationships, and they are open to doing that. They want to do this in a respectful manner and properly, rather than just turning it into a toggle. The Blight is not gone, but it is changed forever. It's less perilous and virulent than it was before, and no longer receives power from the Veil, which is why Balara or Nev doesn't die. Wardens no longer hear the calling, but they do hear something. What is it? That is not yet clear. All right, that's all the information that I had specifically regarding future games. Now let's move into the section regarding Solas. It's not clear what would have happened to the elves if Solas's ritual had succeeded. Raw magic would have poured into the world and immortality would be possible, but there would be pain and suffering. Solas knows more about the Executors than any other living being, including other members of the Evanuris. He isn't entirely sure who they are or what they are actually up to. They are deeply risk-averse, and consequently some of their plans fail to succeed. They are also attempting to manipulate very strong-willed characters, so this requires a light touch. Loghain was used as an example of someone who would have to be pushed very gently. The question was asked, why does Mathal's essence relieve Solas of his guilt when in his memories she's objecting to what he's doing? The answer is because Mathal's essence in Morgan has benefited from centuries of experiences with Flemeth, the Hero of Ferelden, Hawke, and the Inquisitor. This version of Mathal recognizes her culpability and what he has done and twisting him into a different person. Considering the Fade is made of thoughts and dreams, the prison Solas ends up in will be significantly better if he's with the Inquisitor compared to being by himself. Alright, that's it for the Solas section, so now let's move into world building. Bioware will not confirm if Andraste was at one time a vessel for Mythal. The question was asked, if an elf were to exist in the Fade for an extended period of time, would they regain elven magic and immortality? The answer is, there is no way to know what would happen to an elf who spends an extended period of time in the Fade. Elves of today are significantly different from Solas, and the Fade has changed significantly since the time when Solas was a spirit. The remaining Evanurs are a shell of their former selves. The death of their archdemons, while still trapped in the Fade, caused enough magical feedback that it broke their minds and bodies. A couple may have survived, but they will not be in the same state as Gillenane and Elganon. What makes up Dragon Age's core identity? Corinne says Dragon Age is an experience about people. The setting serves as an opportunity to explore the depths and motivations of characters during times of crisis, joy, and companionship. Dragon Age is also a franchise where each game has been different in its approach. Technically, there are too few griffins to keep them from going extinct again, but there's enough magic and mystery in Dragon Age to figure that out. Bioware is open to doing a World of Thedas Volume 3, considering all of the major lore reveals in Veilguard. Navarans are known as veggies. Navarra is primarily a vegetarian country, but it attracts plenty of students and scholars from around the world, given its connection to the necropolis and the specific magic tutelage that the Mournwatch provides. Consequently, their cuisine is broad across a number of different cultures and regions. Some of those cuisines highly value meat. Alright, that's it for the world building section, so now we'll head into the largest section regarding specifically the Veilguard game. Rook was always going to be the Veilguard protagonist. It was never going to be the Inquisitor. First Warden Jarwin was more of a politician because that's the type of leader the Grey Wardens needed after Origins. They wanted to make sure what Loghain did could never happen again. He was at one time a fearsome warrior, and if you refrained from striking him, you'd get a glimpse of that. The question was asked, why were Harding or Davrin the ones who could automatically die in the end? The answer is, both of them have non-quantum reasons for being willing to sacrifice everything to stop the gods. Davrin saw Weishaupt fall, and consequently, his own opportunity to heroically sacrifice himself was taken away. Harding has been on her quest for nearly a decade and recently witnessed Varric, her friend and mentor, perish. Therefore, both of them made more sense compared to the rest of your group. The question was also asked, how were Balara or Nev cured from being blighted in the ending? We already talked about this a little bit, but they expanded on this further. When Solas bound himself to the Veil, it severed the connection that the Blight had to the waking world. The Veil had been leaking ever since the Magisters entered the Black City, and the dreams of the Titans gave it terrible and awesome power. The Veil has been fully repaired, and the Blight lacks that motive force. There still is no cure, but it's no longer a short-term death sentence. Unlike the rest of your party members, Emmerich doesn't have a bed because he sleeps while standing up, like a horse. Bianca is aware that Varric is dead because Harding would have gotten word to her. When Lucanus and Rook are intimate, Spite does not watch. He wanders off to go read a book or whatever demons do for fun. John wishes they could have devoted more time to the Atom split from the Qunari. In a dream world, it would have been nice to have Ben Hasserith as a faction in the game that you weren't sure you could trust. Corinne wishes they could have gone deeper on romances and provided more choices to import. If DLC was an option, Corinne would want to add a Bard and or Blood Mage type class. She fought hard to keep the Transmog feature, Hall of Valor, and the Haunts questline along with the photo mode. All winged dragons are female, and consequently, all archdemons are female. Elganon refers to his archdemon Lusicon as male because he sees it as an extension of himself, not as a separate entity. Also, he is as scarred and blighted as Gillenane, but uses a portion of his magic to appear more regal because of his ego. You don't see until the end how corrupted he has become. The Rite of Tranquility is never mentioned in Veilguard because it's a very rare form of punishment against mages who are completely without allies or political power. Balara uses a lot of sci-fi phrases to explain magic. This is because she is explaining elven magic, death magic, Tevinter magic, and other types work very differently. Originally, Tevinter had a wider scope, but Bioware chose to focus on Docktown and put more content there, as opposed to expanding into more areas but have them feel empty. There were conversations about adding additional endings, even a Soulless Winds option, but they were ultimately abandoned, and John is happy with the diversity of endings in the game. Bioware expected players to constantly break things in the environment. Originally, widespread destructibles weren't in the game, but Corinne found it very enjoyable and pushed for more destructible objects. There was talk about adding a dreamer into the game, along with an optional quest line that would have you go out into the world and then meet the dreamer again in the crossroads repeatedly. It was abandoned in part because the Champions quest line has a similar pattern. Bioware moved away from active conversations with companions due to tech limitations. They felt it was more important to demonstrate your team was growing and to see them interact in common spaces such as each other's rooms. Red Lyrium still exists, but it didn't serve a purpose that the Blight didn't already cover, so you rarely hear it referenced in the game. The faction of the Crows we meet are the idealists of the group. Other Crows are much more bloodthirsty and pragmatic. There's cut content that explains this distinction further. And that's it. Those are all the points from the AMA that I felt like, all right, players would really be interested in this, and this would be cool to let them know. I will, once again, I think I already mentioned this, I will leave a link down in the description so that you can see the AMA for yourself. Some of the questions, the way they're worded, are very funny. Sometimes they're expanded upon in ways that I didn't include here because I didn't want to make this video crazy long, so I definitely would invite you to go ahead, take a look at it. And one more time, really happy Bioware did this. I thought this was really cool information. Definitely makes me more excited for the future of Dragon Age. I'm hoping that we get another one. We'll see how Mass Effect 5 works out. I know that whole team is switched over to helping on that game, so no one knows what the future holds. But anyway, looking forward to hearing your feedback. Let me know your thoughts down in the description below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.